Hey, good morning, YouTube neighbors. So, this is the end result of my dose estimation worksheet. Right now, it is tuned to estimate dosage for a Safecast Geiger meter with a very specific detector. This is based on detector characteristics, which, if it's a good detector, it will have these characteristics from the manufacturer. But the challenge here is understanding the detector and the difference it makes in how that detector is used. So we know there's three types of particles that are generally emitted and talked about in a nuclear release. There's gamma, alpha, and beta. And yes, there's more, but this is what we're talking to here because this is what this meter responds to. It does not respond to those other things typically. So alpha, beta, and gamma energy. These are not electrons. These are not photons. These are different particles, subatomic particles that, well, they all are. So, but here's what we did. We built this worksheet based upon this sheet, which is called setup data. All right, this is very specific to this tube. This detector, this meter, has an LND 7317 tube, and it has physics information about how it detects particles, how well it detects. Now, gamma particles, you can see this detector sees 70% of gamma particles. This is what the manufacturer has qualified and quantified the detector to do. A lot of time spent doing this stuff, proving it. So it only reports 70% of the gamma particles that go by. If it's not shielded, the detector is open, it can see 30% of beta and 10% of alpha particles. So these aren't made up numbers. This is hard data off of the manufacturer's sheets. Now you might find some different numbers, but they should be close to this. If you have a different kind of detector, then it might not have this level of breakdown. It might only say gamma or beta or alpha. Very detector specific. Even the detector voltage matters, so it has to be at 500 volts, which is the Safecast standard. So these numbers are huge important. If the detector's open, which on these meters it is not, it's shielded by a case, so basically alpha and beta is shielded. You do not measure those particles in the current configuration of the meter. You do see all gamma particles, and gamma particles are non-directional, which throws another kick in there, whereas alpha and beta are typically directional, depending on whether it's a distributed or a point source, right? But those numbers work regardless. That's a side conversation that should be understood to speak well to what this all gets together. The second element here is this relative harm. Consider this your conversion factor for a Sievert's dosage. I could change these into a dose, but I'm not going to because I'm just using the ratios would still be the same. My chart would look the same if I changed these. It's just they would have a milli or microsievert dose. So here you have to know this in order to say more about what the detector is detecting. This is a hard conversation out there, right? What the hell am I talking about? So the first thing I did is I just built a test chart and graph. Okay, so this one you can enter your own data in here, but this was the test one. So I entered in My meter is seeing 1,000 counts, a good round number to work with. I can go back and check the maths in here, make sure I'm doing it right. So, yeah, I'm shaking a little bit. Wish I had a better way to do this, but that costs money. So, yeah, this is kind of pretty big. I've asked folks if they want, they can go in and look at these formulas. If you click on a cell block, right, this software application highlights the cells where the data comes from, or you can go up here and it's linking cell B7 times D1 times 1 divided by B2. So I needed an inverse of a B2 value. And B2 is detector efficiency at 0.7%. So someone can go double check my maths in here to see if the conversation is misleading or incorrect. So, what do we see here? My little Safecast meter, if it was reading 1,000 counts per minute, is actually seeing 1,429 counts per minute, because we know it only reports 70% of what goes by. Now, there's a big error margin on this, but it's like 30% once you get out here, okay? So if it was 100% gamma, you see I've got these blue cells, you can enter your own numbers in here, then the estimated dosage, which is what your sieverts reading is, it's an equivalent dosage. It's an estimated dosage. So is 1429. Now let's call that 1.4 millisieverts or microsieverts, but 1429. If it was 70% gamma, again, you can enter your own data in here, but this is how I set this one up, was my first build. So 70%. Gamma actual count would be 1,000 counts. And that's confusing because I put 1,000 counts as my number in up here, but do the math. This is what the math works out to. Again, it's in the cell. Pretty standard maths. But so now we're, instead of seeing 1,428 counts, only 1,000 of those counts are alpha, or I'm sorry, gamma. But I should color code these maybe. 3,000 counts are attributed to alpha. Okay, I got rid of the beta because there's a text explanation up there. It just makes this simpler to present, but we could do it if we wanted to. There's no error checking in these cells, so you can put 70 and 70 and get a really weird number. But this isn't bulletproof. It's for display purposes and conversation. So again, my meter is actually only showing me 1,000 counts. My harm display is showing 1.4 microsieverts. But if 30% of that is actually alpha or beta particles, it's seeing 3,000 of those going by because of this efficiency number, detector efficiency. This is huge. This makes a big difference in the numbers going by. So our dose went from, I said 1.4 microsieverts up to 31 microsieverts if it's 30% alpha. If it was 70% alpha, our dose goes up to 70 microsieverts, right? I moved the decimal place 3 places, but this is just an example, okay? So then I went, and my meter sitting out in the backyard typically reads 32 counts per minute. That's the Portland, Oregon, pretty much the average for miles and miles around here, unless you go up into the high desert where you start to get into higher concentrations of these minerals and possibly some contamination, but that's another story, another video. So again, I'm at 32 counts per minute. So now my dose is 45 somethings if it was 100% gamma, but still, look at the, come on, close. Look at the 100% alpha reading. The odds of you being in that environment, again, the multiplication factors here are huge. The correction factors are way off for getting true dosimetry. So, what am I saying here? For the average Joe, your calibration can be off by factors of, what, 1,000, hundreds, or thousands. And if you don't know your detector, you can make some poor assumptions. So where would you learn about this out in the real world? The only place I have seen or know, and again, this comes from their course materials that you can find, is the Argonne National Labs ANL ResRad program. And you can go pay and sign up and go sit in those courses, and this is one small piece of what they'll go through. Because in a mixed radiological environment, people with Geiger counters are going to go out there because they're fast, simple, and cheap. The Geiger counters would either have their dosimetry corrected properly with these factors considered, or they might just leave it hard numbers and leave the operator out there guessing and bring the data back. This is new software that's out there. Bring the data back to a central repository where it can be analyzed. Because as the meter moves through a contaminated area, the readings become more important. The dosimetry becomes more important. If you're seeing high alpha and beta, that means those particles are within feet proximity of you. A gamma particle can be a foot or a mile away. Not the particle, I'm sorry, the source particle, the emitter particle, the nuclide, the radioisotope that is emitting the particles. This is how this works. This is how dosimetry works. This is why fools waving Geiger counters claiming safety in a mixed media, a mixed pollution environment. Now, we could go into gas chromatography, another thing I touched on, and how difficult it is to do this because you have to know the questions you're asking and if the meter can answer them. So there you go. There's a simple explanation of why a Geiger counter can lie to you, why people aren't stepping into this conversation, because it took me 12 minutes to go through it. So if you listened, thank you. Welcome to Dosimetry 101. The rest of the course is the rest of your life.